What's the one thing that we can't leave undone as believers? And I mean undone on a daily basis. I have no doubt that you could make a list of things that would be good to do today. Is there one thing that you cannot overlook? I think there is. I think it's meditating on the cross. If your heart is going to be humbled, if you're going to be filled with a sense of love for others, if you are going to actually, instead of just feeling like the Christian life is a list of duties, but have such a wellspring of gratitude that those duties feel like delights, you need the cross. It's what guards us from temptation. It's not just a piece of who we are or what we're meant to be doing. It's behind everything that we are. It fuels all that we're meant to be and do as Christians. And that's why we have to be meditating on the cross, not just occasionally, but daily. Now, one of the difficulties that you're going to have when it comes to meditating on the cross is sometimes the cross is going to feel like it's 2,000 years away, like it happened on a foreign continent. As it were, it's going to feel distant. And the question is, how are you going to overcome the distance such that yet again, for another time, you find yourself suddenly, as it were, right there at the feet of Jesus, looking up in his loving eyes, seeing the tears, seeing the blood, hearing his groans, and yet knowing that that is his love poured out for you. How do you get there? Well, I can't recommend anything more powerful than meditating on classic hymns. Now, this particular hymn that we're going to look at in this workout, the reason it's particularly helpful is it reminds us of the awfulness of our sin. Now, that might sound like kind of a depressing thing to think about, but it's only when we realize the weightiness of our sin that we begin to recognize the greatness of the love of God for us. It's also only as we realize the weightiness of our sin that we actually want sin to be out of our heart, and we actually want to see it put to death in our lives. And so although it might seem like a sobering topic to take up, it's one that we need with sobriety to think about regularly. Now, I'm not going to work through the whole of this hymn because that's something you need to do. But what I want to do is coach you so that you can meditate more fruitfully on this hymn. And so I want to pull out some things that are particularly useful to think about as you take this hymn and as you use it for your own devotional time. Let me just read the start. Stricken, smitten, and afflicted, see him dying on the tree. 'Tis the Christ by man rejected. Yes, my soul, 'tis he, 'tis he. What's so powerful about these opening lines is that word see. Notice that's a call to action, and it's a present call to action. Too often the cross, it feels like it's behind us. But this hymn, it's forcing us not to think about the cross as behind us, but happening right before us. See him dying on the tree. That's what the hymn wants to do. It wants to take us to the place so right now we can see him stricken, smitten, and afflicted, that suffering servant of Isaiah 53. And notice the mark of recognition. Because when you come into the hymn, you're not going to be there, but as you begin to meditate, there ought to be this moment of recognition. Yes, my soul, 'tis he, that now you're seeing it again. That this is the long-expected prophet, David's son, yet David's Lord. By his son, God now has spoken. 'Tis the true and faithful word, that this is the one right before me who's giving his life on my behalf. Now, similarly, as you go into the second stanza, notice there's a really interesting question. You might skip over it. Don't. Tell me, ye who hear him groaning, was there ever grief like his? Notice something. You who hear him groaning. Not everyone who reads this hymn, or even tries to meditate on the cross, will successfully reach a place where, as it were, they can hear Christ groaning. It's only the person that is really identifying the suffering of the Savior that is able to answer this question. Tell me, you who hear him groaning, can you hear him groaning? Are you that close imaginatively to what is happening on the cross? Was there ever grief like his? In that stanza, if you'll read it, if you'll reflect on it, at the very end of it, it's going to just take the floor beneath your feet. You're going to find yourself face down before God, as you're reminded that in spite of all the other suffering, the deepest stroke that pierced him was the stroke that justice gave. that actually what's happening there, the deepest suffering that Jesus experienced, it was the penalty of justice, but justice for what? Not the sin that he had committed. Friends, this is when the arrow goes in the heart. It's the sin that you committed. Now, the third stanza, I think this may be the most important reason to meditate on this hymn. It says, "Ye who think of sin but lightly, nor suppose the evil great, here may view its nature rightly. Here its guilt may estimate. Mark the sacrifice appointed. See who bears the awful load. 'Tis the Word, the Lord's anointed, Son of Man and Son of God." We all struggle with taking sin for granted and treating it as if it's a light matter. I know I do. I know you do. How do you actually estimate the weightiness, the guilt of sin? There's only one place you can go. It's certainly not by comparing yourself with other people, other sinful people. It's only as you look at the cross and recognize that it took the Son of God becoming a man and his blood being shed as a sacrifice for your sin to be cleansed and for your sin to be atoned for. It's only when you reckon on that scale the weightiness of your sin that you realize there's no such thing as a light sin. There's no such thing as a small sinner. But that if it was just your sin, the cost for you to be forgiven, it would have taken the sacrifice of God's Son on your behalf. And what happens as you reflect on that reality is, one, you will begin to hate your sin, which is important. Because if you ever want to begin to put your sin to death, you've got to recognize your sin as something that's horrifying, something you loathe, something you cry out that the Spirit might deliver you from whatever remnant of sin is still in your heart. You begin to hate your sin, but equally, you begin to reckon just how great the love of your Savior is for you, that he was willing to be that sacrifice for you because he loved you. Now, where this hymn wants to leave us, it's not in the place of just kind of morbid introspection. I mean, that's not what this hymn is about. It's not even in the place of just thinking about the weightiness of sin. It's wanting to leave us on a firm foundation. And so let me just, I'll read the last two lines. "None shall ever be confounded who on him their hope has built." And so what will happen if you meditate on this hymn is it's going to take you back. You're going to be positioned right there before Jesus. You're going to be hearing his groaning. You're going to be reckoning again the weightiness of your sin, but equally the love of your Savior. But the outcome of the meditation is going to be that you're going to start your day on firm footing. So that as Satan wants to whisper his lies and tell you that there's condemnation or you should be feeling guilt or shame, you're going to know, no, your Savior, he died for you, that his work is finished in terms of dealing with your sin. It's costed penalty. But you're also going to be sent out on that firm ground of gratitude as well, wanting to ask the question to the Savior who poured his life out on your behalf, how can I serve you today? And so, friends, if you know you need to be at the cross, if you know you need to find your way to the feet of Jesus again, let me encourage you, use this hymn workout this week. Meditate on the cross and discover that firm foundation that you need to stand on each day in order to be able to serve God and to offer your life as a living sacrifice.